Today on Open Mind UFO Report, a new development in the case of Bob Lazar. UFOs are regular visitors to a beach in Florida, and a father and son film UFOs in Peru. Your Open Mind UFO Report starts now. Hello and welcome to the Open Mind UFO Report. My name is Alejandro Rojas. Are there aliens at Area 51? Last week we talked about NASA's administrator saying he didn't see any. However, there are new developments in the case that put Area 51 on the map. In the late 1980s, an anonymous witness began talking to Las Vegas investigative journalist George Knapp about his weird job at a laboratory in Area 51 called S4. The witness says he worked as a scientist on what appeared to be a project to back-engineer alien spacecraft. The story took off, and we eventually came to know the witness to be Bob Lazar. He says he was fired for talking about what he knew, and his employment records as a scientist and his educational records were erased. Lazar's claims have been hotly debated for decades, and thus far, no one has come forward to say they went to school with Lazar or that they could verify he was a scientist. That is, until now. Napa said he has spoken with people who claim to have worked with Lazar, but none of them have ever wanted to come forward in fear of suffering the same consequences as Lazar. However, Knapp interviewed Jeremy Corbell recently on Coast to Coast AM, and Corbell says he did find a scientist willing to come forward who says he did work with Lazar. Corbell is a documentary filmmaker who has been researching Lazar's claims for a new film. We caught up with Corbell on Skype to ask him more about this new witness. All right, so you made a pretty exciting discovery, and the way that you made this discovery is pretty interesting. How did you do this?
Well, I was, essentially, I'm always scouring the web for information from a variety of sources. I think what you're inferring to is the idea of using web bots in order to collect data. So yeah, basic data mining, there's a lot of different ways to do it, everything from Google alerts to much, much more sophisticated ways. But essentially, you can string together and link words like, I know Bob Lazar, or someone I knew Bob Lazar. And that's precisely what came up. And so I found a guy who had posted just kind of randomly somewhere in reaction to some story, and found him, and his name is Paul, and I was able to contact him, and he's a military guy. He understood exactly where I was coming from, and told him I didn't want to harass his friend, just wanted to get to the truth, and kind of had to earn the trust and respect of Dr. Krangle, and very quickly, we hit it off, and I was able to kind of get to the heart of the matter, which is he was a physicist at Los Alamos in the 80s, and not from the world of ufology, and he remembers Bob Lazar as a physicist out there. And that was kind of amazing to me.
Mm-hmm. And why is that in particular so important?
That is so important because people have spent over 25 years trying to prove things about his education and all this. And honestly, for me, that was never the push button topic. If Bob was homeschooled and then ended up working at Los Alamos, that means more to me. If he worked at Los Alamos, it then, stands to reason. It's possible he was picked up because of his scientific prowess to work out at Area 51 Subbase S4. So it was pretty astounding because no one was willing on the record to stand up and say, I knew Bob Lazar from Los Alamos. Off the record, I can tell you I've spoken to a number of people. But on the record, this was the first one in 25 years.
And he's been able to show you enough information to demonstrate to you, to your satisfaction, that he actually is a physicist that did work at Los Alamos.
Oh, yeah, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I can put Dr. Krangle at Los Alamos as early as 1980. He showed me his badges from China Lake, Kirtland Air Force Base, Sandia, the weapon storage, Manzano weapon storage. Even showed me Homeland Security badge from New Mexico Tech for energetic materials research and testing. He showed me Department of Energy contracts from Los Alamos that show completed jobs for the National Nuclear Security Administration. I mean, he really showed me enough for me to understand that he was there. He is a serious scientist, and he does do scientific work as a subcontractor. But what was so astounding to me about this interview was that he's not a UFO guy. He is just I don't know, a scientific individual who happened to remember Bob's face. He said Bob was like Mick Jagger. He remembered he's building a jet car, and he just kind of had this look.
Mm-hmm. So he didn't work directly with Lazar, but he saw him around, and then I guess he was also in meetings with him that were important.
Correct. He confirmed being in numerous security briefings. And, as he said, look, not everybody's invited to those briefings. It is for staff and people that are subcontractors, but he specifically remembers Bob Lazar at security briefings with him. So again, this kind of throws away the whole notion, which I already knew wasn't true from, my contacts and sources that didn't go on the record. But, now on the record, this throws away the idea that Bob Lazar was just a janitor or whatever the Mirage Men tactics that people use to try to dilute the truth about Bob being a really intelligent and strong scientist.
Now, Lazar claims to have worked on what was most likely extraterrestrial technology, or working on back engineering that. Does Dr. Kringle make similar claims?
No.
Mm-hmm. So he was working on more conventional stuff.
Yeah, he's been working on conventional, conventional projects. Again, I have documentation that go back, to the 80s. But yes, he is. Oddly enough, why he's not so worried is because he doesn't make tons of money off of his contracts with Los Alamos anymore. He does once in a while. They'll call him in. But also, he's pretty confident that not many people are calibration experts like him, and that he kind of has the market cornered. So, even here's the funny thing: even Bob Lazar, when everything was going down, all the shenanigans, right? He was still fixing the detectors for Los Alamos. I mean, even in all that chaos, he still maintained a contract. People don't know that. The government is so compartmentalized, and what happens is if you're good at something, you're utilized.
Mm-hmm. So Dr. Kringle isn't worried about having, similar problems or getting in trouble for talking about Bob Lazar.
I don't think that he is, and also I don't think that he's he's not, deeply involved and educated within the UFO community in any way. So I don't know that he has the full picture of, how profound his story is, to people like us. But time will tell. I don't think he's going to run into that much trouble. What is he saying? He's not leaking national security information. He's just saying, yeah, I saw Bob there. He was working as a physicist at Los Alamos. If somebody hadn't, when they're sitting around, if somebody hadn't just told him that, he would have guessed it from a million miles away. Just the way that people it seemed to revere him kind of. And he talked about the pocket protector and the whole thing. But, at lunch and whatnot, people will talk just a little bit. It is compartmentalized. You can't share too much. But he was very aware that Bob Lazar was a physicist working in scientific capacity, and also that he had a jet car and was kind of a rock star.
Mm-hmm. So you're right. So that's a big deal. So far, we haven't been able to confirm that Bob Lazar was a scientist. He claimed to work at Los Alamos.
There's a lot of people that worked at Area 51. I've actually talked to people from Area 51 and Area 52, where Bob claims to have worked as a completely different sub-base, which, by the way, was acknowledged in 1989 to George Knapp. And I have footage of a revisit of that phone call to the base to ask them if they have a facility or facilities called S4. And they gave a really clever answer, which I hope to show that footage at some point. I'm just figuring out the legality of recording it.
Well, and the big question then comes is, if we can confirm that at least Bob Lazar did work at Los Alamos, why are they lying about that? Why are they holding that information secret?
Well, that is clear. They admitted to George Knapp back in 1989, and when he found out that Bob was a subcontractor through Kurt Meyer, he actually got Kurt Meyer to admit to it, and they were going to give him the documents. And this was over years, and they put an embargo on it. So you can ask, Mr. Knapp about that. But essentially, it's been proved every way from Sunday. And privately, as I said, and I'll just tell you whatever my word is worth, I have talked to a number of people that can put Bob there. I actually not going to go there. But on the record, we now have somebody, and that's the beauty of it. And look, everybody's going to dissect this, and I tell you, I am still dissecting it. Every case is open until I decide it's not. This case is open, but what we have is Bob Lazar there in the late 80s. Now, why this is really important. Everybody argues and they get stuck on this thing about Bob's, education. Again, if Bob can produce some degree, right? Is that going to make you believe in UFOs? Like, it's a huge jump. I don't care if he was homeschooled. What I care about is, where would people working at S4 or, through Area 51, where would they pick people from in order to work on projects? How would they even know about them? Well, if he was working at Los Alamos, especially on the particle physics, which he was, then it's possible that he was handpicked for the 22-person group out at S4.
All right. Well, great. Thank you very much. Great find, and we'll keep up with your work.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. I appreciate it.
All right. Take it easy, man.
You too.
Volano Beach is not just a recreational hotspot, it is also a UFO hotspot, according to a local hotel manager. Debbie Whaley is the manager for the Ocean Beach Inn, and one of her guests recently provided First Coast News a UFO video they recently captured. The witness wanted to remain anonymous, but he has spoken to Whaley about the sighting, and she says this is not the first time guests have reported seeing UFOs in the area. In the video, a light can be seen in the night sky. Not much can be concluded from the video alone, but the witness said it seemed to move in a controlled manner. For this reason, he did not think it was a Chinese lantern. Whaley told First Coast News they had seen lights hovering overhead and flew over them at one time. They were pretty frightened. In the video, the witness can be heard excitedly saying that what he was seeing was scary. Whaley said the description of the object seen in the video was similar to other UFOs that guests reported to her. She even had a couple of pictures. She says, back in early December, some people called and said they saw some of the same type of situation, lights coming in. One acts like it is distressed. One is going up and down, another comes in and out, hovers for a while, and then darts off. Whaley is not convinced that the UFOs are aliens, but she does not think they are Chinese lanterns. She suspects that they might be military in nature. She has not seen the lights herself, but she does think the descriptions are peculiar. Whaley thinks there is something checking the area out. She says, there is something out there besides just our precious little shrimp boats. A floating UFO was caught on video between 5 and 5:30 a.m. over Tarma, Peru on June 17th, according to YouTube poster Edison Avila La Madrid.
Sí, pues, otro más, mira,
Claro, ese se acercó.
mira, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Claro, pues, ese se va y viene.
The video shows 5, sometimes 6 white round lights floating in the night sky that could be attached to the same object or could be floating independently. The video is in Spanish, but much of it was translated by the news website Inquisitor. According to Inquisitor, the witnesses are a father and son. The son mentions that they first saw one light that appeared and then disappeared. Then as more lights appear, the younger witness wonders whether they are 5 separate lights or all part of one big craft. At one point, the younger witness gets scared and asks his father not to leave. The father is heard speculating that the lights belong to one larger object and says that this is why they seem to be so still in the sky. He says, it is still, completely still. It is like that one from Mexico. What we are seeing is just the base of it. He also mentions to his son that he has been seeing things like this for 45 years. One possible answer for what is seen in the video is once again Chinese lanterns. Not only do they often appear to disappear and reappear, wind currents can be strange the higher an object floats, causing some objects to go one way and others to go another. Other online commenters suggest the video could be stars or even a B-2 bomber. Let us know what you think in the comments. That's your Open Minds UFO report for today. You can find these stories and more at openminds.tv. We post fresh UFO news daily. You can also follow us on Twitter at OpenMindsTV, and you can find us on Facebook. Don't forget to register for the International UFO Congress, the Guinness World Record holding largest UFO convention. Early registration is open now, so reserve your spot at the lowest price available all year at ufocongress.com. Let us know if you enjoyed today's episode by liking the episode on YouTube and leaving us your comments in the section below. You can also download our podcast, Open Minds UFO Radio, on iTunes or at openminds.tv/radio. Thanks again for joining us today. For OpenMinds.tv, I'm Alejandro Rojas.